What is an experience that completely altered your life? If you're anything like me and most of the people I work with, you have more than one. You have more than one event, circumstance, or moment in your life that changed the way you see yourself, what you're meant to do, how you see other people, and how you see the world in general. And today I just want to take a little bit of time to share some of my experiences with you because it came to my attention, or I realized that I've been doing this for 150 episodes almost, but there might be some of you out there who still have no clue who I am, why I do what I do, or why you should even listen to me. So in this episode, I'm going to get really personal, really vulnerable, and go really deeply into 3 of the top things, experiences, stories from my life that moved me to become the speaking coach, communication expert, and life integration strategist that I am today. So stick around and share some stories with me, will you? Hi, I am Marcy Amaro, self-leadership coach, communication expert, and your life integration strategist. Before I did any of this, I was a teacher for over 20 years. I am also a wife and a mother, and what I have realized over my decades of experience is that most of us go through life not really living. We go through the motions, we pick a job that makes sense, and we do the things that we're told we need to do, but do we really understand why? And are we really living our best lives? My mission and my goal in life is to help you tap into that uniqueness that makes you uniquely and especially you, to help you use that to create both an impact and an income, and to help you live an integrated life where all the pieces come together to create the best experience possible. Are you ready for a shift? Then stick around and join me in Sincerely Speaking. So one of the most pivotal stories that I talk about all the time is my experience with my high school guidance counselor. I couldn't even tell you her name, which is the funny thing. Like, I've been sifting through my brain the last couple of days trying to think about what her name was even, or why she mattered so much in the grand scheme of things. The only reason why she was even important or relevant in any way in my life is because she was, in fact, the guidance counselor, right? And we all have certain people in our midst in different stages in our life that are supposed to be important, that are supposed to be key people of authority in our lives. And she was one because of her title more than anything else. And pardon me as I fidget with this thing. And I want this to show because it was a gift and I want it to be, hold up. Let's start this section over. What on earth? There. Is that it? Move this away. There we go. So one of the most pivotal experiences in my life, and you've probably, if you've followed me for any period of time, you've heard me mention this again, was my experience with my high school guidance counselor. Now, to be honest, I've been racking my brain the last few days trying to even remember what her name was. I can't remember. So as an individual, she wasn't that important in my life, but because of her title and because of the way I valued school and learning and being respectful to the adults in my life, she was important because of her title, right? She was a guidance counselor. And we all have in different stages in our lives people that are meant to be there for support, for encouragement, and who are supposed to be good authorities in our life that help model what our lives should be like and what we should do. And this person was supposed to be one of those people in my life as a high school student. But what happened was I was this kind of kid, and you can probably guess just by looking at me, but also from some of the things I've said already, that I was one of those kids that followed all the rules. I mean, I've been a people pleaser. I'm a people pleaser in recovery still. And it's hard for me to feel or think like anybody is disappointed in me, or like I've let anybody down, or like I should have done more to help this person. It's really hard for me to feel that way, which is part of why I'm in the field I'm in. But anyway, I digress. The point is, I was always the good kid who got the good grades, who obeyed all the adults, who did all the right things, who followed all the rules, right? But one day I get called into the principal's office and I was just so confused. I was like, what on earth? Why would I, of all people, be called into the office? And when I get there, I'm actually pointed to the guidance counselor's office. So it was actually her calling me. And I peek in the door, which was ajar, and I open it a little bit, like I knocked and I opened the door a little bit. And she doesn't even let me get in the door when she points at me and says, "Who do you think you are?" In that exact same tone. I double backed, like I took a couple of steps back and I stood there frozen. Like that was all I could do. I took a couple of steps back and then I just froze in that position. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. And she goes on, "Answer me. Who do you think you are?" And I was just so confused. So I just looked at her and went, "Excuse me?" And then she goes on to give me this huge spiel about how I came off as arrogant, how people perceived me as thinking that I was better than everybody else, how she had had a couple of complaints in a matter of a couple of hours from different kids telling her that I thought I was their boss, that I thought I was the teacher, and that I acted like everybody needed to listen to me, and how they were afraid to tell me anything because I always thought I knew better and I wouldn't let them win. So I sat there and I listened to everything she had to say. I was never given an opportunity to say anything in return. Not that I really know what I would have said. I don't think that I would have had anything to say. But the point is that at that moment, I sat in confusion. I went home in distress. And I went and I locked myself in my room and I tried to process everything that she had said. And the only conclusion I could come to was that people were misinterpreting what I was saying or the way I was saying it. Either way, it had something to do with the way I was speaking and communicating. And so I decided that the best course of action was to shut up. And for the next decade or so, that's what I did. I mainly only spoke when spoken to. There were only a couple of people that I went outside of that rule with. So there were only a couple of people that I said more than what was asked. I never shared my feelings or my emotions with anybody. And I never, ever, ever gave an opinion or any kind of advice without being expressly asked. And even then, I would confirm. I'd be like, "Are you sure? You really want me to tell you what I think?" Because I was terrified that anything I said would be misconstrued or interpreted as me thinking that I knew better than anybody else. And so I went through a very long period of not wanting to speak up, of hiding my voice and my message and anything that was inside of me. And part of what that did was it actually propelled me to study communication, to know more about how communication works, why I could have created or how I could have created that reaction from people, what I could have said to prompt that from others, and most importantly, what I could do to avoid it in the future. So it became very present in my life, this idea that I needed to take charge of the way I communicated with others so that I could avoid at all costs creating this kind of environment in which people thought I was just being snooty and thinking that I was better than anybody else, right? And that led me to studying deeper than anybody I know the process of communication, understanding personalities, understanding how human interaction works. In fact, one of the things that happened when I decided to become a teacher, which is a whole another story, but one of the things that happened when I decided to become a teacher was that I realized I was going to need to stand in front of a bunch of kids every day for a lot of years. And I needed to figure out how to talk to these kids so that I wouldn't cause that. As a result of that, my first few years as a teacher, I was a disaster. And I'm just being honest, because my biggest concern was, how can I approach these kids in a way that doesn't make them feel like I think they're not valuable or like I think I'm better than them in any way, shape, or form. But I was the teacher, so I needed to be authority somehow. And yet I wanted to please them and I wanted to be their friend and I wanted them to like me. And that was my biggest focus for the first few years. And it made it even worse, the fact that I was 21 when I started teaching, and I was teaching some seniors that were 18, right? So I was very close to them in age. So this whole thing just created this terrible space in which I wasn't being helpful or productive, and I wasn't stepping out of that constraint that I put on myself because of this one conversation with a person of authority. And so I moved through many, many years and many iterations of studying and learning and testing and trying until I finally got to the space where I was again comfortable with using my voice in the way that I was designed to use my voice, right? In a way that was constructive, that actually helped people. And one of the things that helped me along the way was understanding that we all have one voice, but that one voice has many different inflections, right? So you don't have to stop being you in order to modify the way you speak to people so that they can understand and relate to what you're saying and how you're saying it. In fact, I'm reminded right now of a former student of mine that we're going to call Keith. That was not his name, obviously, but we're going to call him Keith. And he was a student that was already in 10th grade, no, ninth grade. He was in high school. And he had gone through most of his schooling, doing everything in his power to be invisible. He didn't want to be noticed. He didn't want to be seen. He wore black clothes all the time. If he was allowed to, he would keep a hoodie or a hat over his head, which I didn't let him do. He would wear sunglasses whenever possible. He would do literally everything in his power to hide, to be invisible. And at first, when he first started my class, I let him just sit in his corner and do his hiding. He put his head down. He didn't say much, whatever. The second week, I tried asking him a question and he wouldn't answer. So I didn't push, but I tried. And then the third week, I couldn't stand it anymore. So I asked him to stand back, to stay after class. And he thought immediately he was in trouble. So he was defensive and standoffish and all blocked off. And I sat as close to him as I could without being inappropriate. And I looked him in the eye and I said, look at me. I know you're pissed. I know you're angry. And you have every right to be, right? At that, his response, his reaction was shock. And then he sighed and he released. And from that moment on, we established a great rapport and a great communication. And he would talk to me and he would stay behind on purpose because he wanted to talk to me, or he would arrive early. He got a job at Dunkin' Donuts when he was in his sophomore or junior year. And he would come early in the morning just so he could bring me a donut. Like I wasn't his teacher even at that time, but he would still look for me because I was able to communicate in that way, right? So that experience with my guidance counselor that silenced me and shook the essence of who I was and my identity for so long, propelled me to look for ways in which I could use communication in a more effective way, in which I could help others communicate in ways that create a win-win for everybody involved. And that's a big part of what I do today. And that's a big part of my why, because I realized that like me and like Keith, there are things in life that silence us. There are things in life that make us feel like we can't express who we are, what we're feeling, or what we're thinking. And there's always a way to use your voice, but it is important to use it, right? So I don't want anybody in the world to go around being silenced or feeling like they can't share what's inside their heart to share. And that is one key piece of what I do. The other story I was thinking about was for a while there, I got really burnt out with teaching before I actually ended up quitting a few years after that. But anyway, I got really burnt out with teaching for a while. And I looked for an alternative, something else that I could do because I had to take a break. I had to take a little bit of a hiatus at that point. And I went into financial services and I started working for this company that sold supplemental insurance, right? So income replacement insurance, cancer, things like that, right? So all those insurances that are supplemental to health insurance. And we would go actually sell door to door pretty much. We would go out into the streets, sell to people in businesses, to people's homes, and we would just go out and find clients. Now, one of the things that made it really hard for me to be in that space, especially after coming from education, was that very often I felt like what we were doing in order to get clients was not in the client's best interest. And it definitely 100% did not fit my personality, my style, or the way I felt comfortable doing things. So very often I was told and directed and asked to do things that felt so foreign to me, so foreign. And so when I really was pushed, when my supervisor was watching, when people were around me telling me, do good, go, 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 then I would make the sale. And I would see that the strategy that they were teaching me, I could see why they were teaching it because it yielded results a lot of the time. But what my heart was telling me was that I was making money at the expense of someone else. It also was telling me that that strategy, while it might have been effective, it didn't fit who I am. It didn't go with the person that I wanted to look at in the mirror at the end of the day. And I started to wonder if I had to shift my identity, stop being who I am in order to be successful in business, and especially in that kind of business, right? So it made me question my authenticity. It made me question whether being the person that I am was enough. And it made me question whether when someone comes well intentionally to teach you a strategy, it should always be followed exactly as modeled, right? And one of the lessons, the key lessons that I learned, and one of the main things that led me to doing things the way I do them is that I realized that if I am going to be successful, like truly successful, then I have to be able to look at myself in the mirror and be not just satisfied with, but be pleased with the way I do business from day to day. So my intention in my heart is to serve. When I was able, and it was few and far between, right? But when I was able to sell a policy to someone that didn't have any kind of protection, that really wasn't thinking through how to maximize and protect themselves, their legacy, their wealth, whatever it is that they had, and I was able to create a win-win for us, then it felt like, it felt so joyful. It felt like heaven, right? It felt like I was floating when that happened. But whenever I had to use one of those strategies or those techniques that I was forced to use, but that were outside of who I am, I felt like crap. I made money, but I felt like crap. And sometimes I made really good money, but I still felt like crap. And I especially felt like crap because part of me knew that this person was going to cancel the policy. And I was going to have what is called a chargeback. I was going to have to pay back at least part of what I made in commissions because this person wasn't going to keep that policy for a very long time. They probably just signed up to get me out of their face, to get me to go away. Does that make sense? So one of the other things that is key, that is essential to me, is to live in a space where I feel confident because I know that what I'm doing is in keeping with who I am. And I can trust myself to keep performing and to keep doing the thing because it is something that matches who I am, that matches my personality, my beliefs, my values, the way I want to do things, right? And so that is the self-leadership piece of everything that I do, is the understanding that if I am going to be truly successful at anything, then I have to be able to lead myself into a space where I can do things with integrity, with consistency, with sustainability, without letting emotions get in the way unnecessarily, but knowing that at the end of the day, I'm going to be able to look at myself in the mirror and be pleased with what I'm doing, right? So that's what self-leadership does, is it allows you to take control and to truly own who you are and what you do, and to make sure that everything that you're doing is moving forward in a way that is sustainable, that is profitable, not just in money, but in lifestyle and in time and in everything that you're doing, right? And to do it in a way that is duplicatable so that you can then teach it to others. And this is a big part of my why, right? And then finally, the other story I want to share with you is when I started building my business, I started looking for mentors. Like I've always known, especially I guess because of my background in education, I've always known that if you want to shorten your learning curve and if you want to expedite whatever result it is that you're after, the best, easiest, and most effective way to do it is to find a coach, a mentor, or someone that you can model that has already walked the journey that you're starting, right? So I always knew that starting a business meant that I was going to invest in mentorship and coaching in order to help me do the things that I didn't know how to do. But when I first started, for whatever reason, I was drawn to coaches and mentors who taught specific strategies. And I'm a really good student. Like, I think we established this from the first story, right? I follow the rules. I do what I'm told. I want to please. I don't want to disappoint. So I'm pretty good at following instructions. And you tell me to do, I'll go do, right? And sometimes if it's too uncomfortable, I might procrastinate a little bit, but I will find a way to make it fit and to make it work for what I'm trying to do, right? So I hired this mentor, and it wasn't a cheap mentor, not cheap at all. And I started doing the things and implementing the things, and nothing was happening. I kept plugging along and chugging along, and I would ask the questions, and I would show up and take notes, and I would listen to the recordings of the trainings, and I would do everything that I was told to do. I would pause and do, and I would just implement like crazy, but nothing was happening. And then I started to think, oh my goodness, what on earth is it that is going on here? Why am I having such a hard time getting the results when all these other people are getting the results and I'm not? And one of the things that I realized was, like I said before, not all the pieces of the strategy really fit into my personality and my way of doing things, right? So that was one piece, but that wasn't enough to explain why I wasn't getting any, like none, zero results. And then it hit me. I was looking to build a business, and I was spending all this time, energy, and focus on building my business. But all the time, energy, and focus I was spending on my business, I was taking away from my kids and my husband. And one of my top values is family. So I wasn't advancing. I wasn't getting any results because there was a struggle inside of me between what I said I wanted and the values that I held. Like, I saw them in conflict subconsciously. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I kept telling myself, but see, look, you're already spending all this time, money, and energy and focus on building your business, and you're not even in the business yet. What's going to happen when you're full time in the business and you have to spend all your time, all your energy, and all your effort, all your focus on the business? What's going to happen with your family? You're going to neglect your family. So how can you build a business knowing that it is going to negatively affect your family? That was the inner struggle that was going on that I wasn't even aware of, but that was stopping me dead on my tracks. That wasn't letting me move forward with what I knew I wanted to do. So I had to work to reconcile the two. I had to work really hard to figure out how to have my entirety, everything that's in my life, work in integration and work together. So that's the life integration strategy piece, is helping others understand where their life might not be integrated, where something might be being maybe sacrificed or neglected that is still important to you, and how that might be affecting other areas of your life. It's understanding that there's more than one level to who we are, that we hold more than one role, that there is a complexity of intention and a complexity of moving pieces, right? We have like these cogs that get to work together in order to move the engine of our lives forward. And how do we put them together so that they all make sense with one another? And so that at the end of the day, when we're looking at ourselves and we're looking at everything that we've done, we can feel fully satisfied that every area of priority has been taken care of. And I'm not talking about work-life balance. Work-life balance, in my opinion, is a very narrow view, because we are more than our work, and our life has many pieces to it. And if we start compartmentalizing and separating work from life, we're basically trying to pull a limb out of our body and make it operate separately, right? So when we live in an integrated fashion, we understand that all the pieces work together, that all of them constitute our entirety of our lives, that the relationships, the career, the spirituality, the mindset, all of them, our body, all of those pieces work together in order to create one whole us. So it's about being whole again. It's about integrating all the pieces of our lives so that they work in communion with each other. It's about making sure that we are moving towards a purpose and that all the pieces in our life contribute to that purpose. Makes sense? So that is the other area of my why. It's helping creative, multi-passionate people who are contribution driven, understand that they can have the purpose, the fulfillment, the confidence, the lifestyle that they're seeking without having to sacrifice any one aspect of their life, without going into full-blown overwhelm, without feeling guilty all the time, without feeling like they're torn in a million different directions and pulled in a million different ways. And so that is why I do what I do, because I think everybody has a voice that deserves to be heard. Because I believe wholeheartedly that the best way you can confidently move forward and live the best life ever is by leading yourself into authenticity and into genuineness. And because I believe that it is possible to have a life that's integrated, where all the pieces come together to create the relationships, the career, the lifestyle that you can be proud of and that you love. And so my invitation to you is this. If that sounds like something that you would like to work on, if you have been trying to figure out why you keep spinning your wheels and nothing seems to happen, you can't seem to gain traction, if you are dissatisfied with the way you've been living, but you know that there has to be more, and if you know that you know that you know that you were called to do something special on this planet, but you just don't know how to get started or don't know how to take it to the next level, then I invite you to set up some time for us to talk. We will go over your goals, we will go over your dreams, we will figure out what it is that is stopping you, and at the end of the process, we will have a plan for you to move forward, and we will talk about whether it is a good fit for you to work with me or not, and whether I can help you further in achieving that goal, in achieving that life that you've been dreaming about. So if that is you, then go ahead and find the link in the episode notes, right? In the episode notes, you're going to find a link to schedule some time with me. There will be an application before you can pick a time. It's just a way for us to maximize our time together, for me to have some information ahead of time before we sit down to talk. But it will take you a few minutes to fill out that application, and then you can select a time and we'll sit together for 30 minutes. No cost, no obligation. We'll just talk about your future and what that can look like once you live an integrated life. So again, I'm Marcy Morrow. Thank you for listening to my stories. I look forward to hearing yours, and I look forward to meeting you in our 30 minutes together. Chat soon.